Hey guys, Levi Diesel Performance here. I'm going to do a video today going over 6.7 liter Dodge turbo actuators. Had a customer in with a 2012 and he said that he was getting some response codes for the VGT. We scanned it and sure enough it said turbo slow response. Typically it's a sign that your actuator, people think it's your actuator going bad. Typically it's actually the turbo going bad. So what happens is your vanes start to get sooted up on the turbo, and I'll show you where we're at right here. So if you pop the hood, your intake's normally right here in the way, your turbo's down in there. So typically what we do if someone comes in with an issue like this is it's already thrown a code, so there's no reason to, pull up your PIDs on your scan code, go out and drive it and make it do it and catch it. It's basically out of range. What it wants is there's a desired position for the actuator and it's out of that range. And so sometimes that only happens when it gets hot and the vanes are sticky and sooted up. So sometimes it's hard to replicate, especially when the truck's cold. So typically what we do is we just pull the actuator and we get in there and look. So if you go in through your passenger side, take your fender well out, you can see the actuator mounts right there, and we've already removed it. So this rod here is your actuator arm, and your actuator just moves this back and forth, and that's what opens and closes your vanes, and that allows your turbo to spool up quicker or slower. And so when you move that back and forth, it should be really loose. You shouldn't feel a ton of drag on it or anything like that. There shouldn't be a spot where it catches. It should just basically fall back and forth. You shouldn't hardly have to put any pressure on it. So this one, it was working just fine. The arm felt just fine the way it moved. Now I'm going to see if turn my flashlight on here. Well, it's not going to work, so it's hard to see, but inside here you can see some oil. So that oil is what I really wanted to talk about today. That I got sitting on the toolbox over here. So when I popped it, I knew immediately we had a turbo failure. So if you see the oil that's in here, it's on the end of this boss right here, and it's all around. It gets inside your gear here. This is where it turns that arm, and it gets into your circuit board up in here, and then it fries your actuator. So what's happening is there is a lip seal. There's a lip seal around that arm that's keeping the oil from leaking out. So when that lip seal goes bad, it puts the oil into your actuator and then it fails. So we have a lot of people, and I hate doing it, we have a lot of people who call or they just want to try an actuator. They don't want to put a turbo on. Especially when I see that, if I put a brand new actuator on this thing, it'll work until it starts pushing oil out that seal, and then it's going to fail. Seems like 9 out of 10 times when we put an actuator on alone, it always comes back, especially a lot of times within a month. Sometimes they'll get half a year, but most of the time that actuator ends up not just fixing the issue, it's the turbo. So like I said, in this case the vanes felt just fine, but it's still a turbo failure because that lip seal is blowing out right there. So those actuators also are not cheap at all. I think a wholesale version of this actuator is, say, somewhere around $1,000 to $1,200. We have found some really good reman ones out there. Some aftermarket reman options that are cheaper. I think they can bring the price down to around, maybe $700 or $800 if I remember right. So it's significantly cheaper, and we haven't had any issues with those. But once again, it's not cheap. So the only time that I typically replace the actuator alone, sometimes they just stop working entirely. I can hook up to them with kind of a actuator calibrating tool we have to rebuild these and then calibrate them on our bench rather than on the truck. So if it's me, if I would have plugged it into that thing and it just didn't do a single thing and I saw no signs of oil leaking or whatever, then yeah, I might have just tried an actuator on this one. But like I said, 9 out of 10 times we see it fail. So that's just my little 2 cents. Those electronic actuators on everything style, it has a harness built into the actuator. That's for an 07 to 12 Dodge. The newer style just doesn't have this harness. There's just a clip here. The harness stays on the truck. That's on everything newer on these Dodges, newer than 2012. So 2013 to 2018 have their own actuator. 2018 and newer have a different actuator. So, but the same thing's true for almost any Holset turbo. You know, if you're working on a bigger Cummins engine, they have an actuator that looks slightly different. It's fairly similar, but slightly different. But the same things apply to it. There's a lip seal behind that arm. If that lip seal fails, it gets oil in the actuator, just like you saw on this one. And, you know, I'd say on the turbos that come in, I see oil behind that actuator probably somewhere around 20 to 25% of the time. The other times it fails is just because the arm is sticking. And once again, if the arm's sticking and you you just want to try an actuator on it, it'll work for, like I said, somewhere a month, 6 months. But if there's extra drag on that arm, it's going to fail prematurely. So, you know, if it's one of those things where you just want to limp it and get it by, I mean, $1,000 for an actuator is a lot of money to spend not to fix the root cause, in my opinion. So that's it for today. Hope this video helps, you know, some people understand some stuff. Something I didn't cover is before you pull that actuator arm, you need to drain your coolant. The reason why you need to drain your coolant is because coolant runs through that actuator to cool it down. So these 2 holes up here are coolant ports. One's coolant in and one is coolant out. And they can fail and cause, well, these seals can fail on your, these O-rings right here, and cause premature failure too. So this is where your coolant runs. It'd be really hard for this seal and this seal to fail and get coolant into there. But I suppose it's possible. But the reason why you need to drain the coolant first is because this sits like this on the truck. So if it's full of coolant and you pull this out, what's going to happen is coolant's going to fall from here down into here, and it's going to fall right into your gear and into your circuit board. And we've seen many people pull that, it comes in full of coolant, and we know it's junk. You know, there's no point in testing it at that point. So yeah, just a little tidbit there. Drain your coolant before you pull the actuator. But hopefully that helps somebody today. If you have any questions over it, you can always call us at the shop, 816-324-6680. Thanks.